Welcome to the deep dive. We take mountains of information, filter them down, and give you those essential nuggets you need to be really well informed. Today we're embarking on, well, quite an intellectual adventure. We're plunging into the, let's say, profound and often pretty provocative world of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Incerto series.
Yeah, it's quite a journey.
It really is. And this isn't just about reading a few books, right? It's more like a holistic immersion into this singular kind of interconnected philosophy.
Yeah.
It really challenges how we think about risk, about randomness, the very structure of our modern world, really.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is to sort of navigate the threads woven through Fooled by Randomness, the Black Swan, Antifragile, and Skin in the Game.
Yeah.
We want to give you a shortcut to understanding Taleb's, well, groundbreaking ideas and maybe uncover some surprising insights along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
So get ready to rethink maybe everything you thought you knew about certainty and expertise, because here's where it gets really interesting.
What's truly fascinating about Taleb's Incerto, I think, is that while, yes, each book tackles a seemingly distinct aspect of uncertainty, they collectively build this kind of edifice, this worldview that's just so much greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
It's this relentless critique, really, of how modern society, particularly, in finance and policy, just fundamentally misunderstands and mismanages the inherent randomness of existence. We'll explore how these interconnected ideas can, well, profoundly shift your perspective on everything from your own personal decision-making all the way up to global economic forces.
Yeah.
And this raises a really important question. In a world that's just dominated by forecasts and expert opinions, how do we actually figure out what truly matters, especially when the unpredictable is often the most impactful thing?
How do you navigate that?
So we'll try to extract the core wisdom from this really rich, sometimes challenging material to help you do just that, navigate precisely that.
Okay, great. So let's unpack the foundational ideas, starting with how easily we can be, well, utterly fooled by randomness. Taleb lays this out brilliantly in his first work, doesn't he? Revealing how our brains are just wired to see patterns where maybe none exist, mistaking sheer luck for profound skill.
Indeed. And that's one of the most critical insights from Fooled by Randomness. How profoundly we misinterpret luck, especially in these really complex domains like, say, financial markets.
Right.
We tend to attribute success, particularly repeated success, to skill, right, or intelligence or some superior strategy, when in fact random variations often play a much, much greater role than we want to acknowledge.
We don't like to admit that, do we?
No, nobody does. Think of a trader who makes an absolute fortune over several years. Our immediate instinct is to lionize them, call them a genius, study their methods. But Taleb basically posits that in a highly volatile, unpredictable environment, a significant chunk of that success might simply be the statistical outcome. You have many individuals taking risks, and a few lucky ones will inevitably win big, even if it's just temporary.
It's almost like the law of large numbers applied to risk-taking.
Kind of, yeah. He uses the analogy of monkeys typing random letters eventually. One might produce a Shakespearean sonnet. It's not skill, it's just a consequence of the vast number of attempts.
So it's about the sheer volume of trials, the number of monkeys typing, not necessarily the inherent genius of any one monkey or trialist.
Exactly.
And this ties directly into what Taleb calls the narrative fallacy. This deep-seated need we have to construct coherent stories around random events, making them seem predictable, but only in hindsight.
Oh, absolutely.
You look back at a successful company, for example, and we weave this compelling tale, right?
Yeah.
Vision, perseverance, strategic brilliance. But in reality, their journey was probably more like a chaotic series of lucky breaks, unforeseen challenges, maybe some accidental discoveries.
Totally messy.
The story gives us comfort, it gives us meaning, but it distorts the true role of randomness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The narrative fallacy is a core psychological bias. Our brains are just hungry for explanations for cause and effect, even when events are purely, well, stochastic, random.
Right.
We create these narratives after the fact, turning these complex contingent sequences into simple, linear, inevitable-seeming stories.
Yeah, makes it sound easy.
And that makes us believe we understand the world much better than we actually do. And crucially, it makes us think we can predict future events by analyzing past patterns.
Which is the dangerous part.
That's the danger. The real insight here is recognizing that while stories are powerful tools, sure, for understanding, they can also be these dangerous traps. They prevent us from appreciating genuine uncertainty and the sheer unpredictability of outcomes. It's why history often seems so logical, yet the future remains stubbornly, well, opaque.
And if we're constantly being misled by randomness and sort of seduced by these neat narratives, then we're completely unprepared for what Taleb terms the Black Swan. Now, this isn't just any unexpected event, is it? It's a very specific kind of surprise with profound implications.
That's right. A Black Swan event has 3 defining characteristics. First, it's an outlier. It lies completely outside the realm of regular expectations because, frankly, nothing in our past experience pointed to its possibility. We genuinely didn't see it coming.
Okay, total surprise.
Second, it carries an extreme impact. Its consequences are massive, often reshaping entire industries, societies, global affairs. Huge deal.
Right.
And third, despite its outlier nature, human beings, well, we concoct explanations for its occurrence after the fact, making it appear explainable and even predictable in hindsight.
The narrative fallacy again.
Exactly. That retrospective predictability is a prime example of the narrative fallacy hard at work. Think about the rise of the internet, or 9/11, or the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah, huge events.
Nobody truly predicted these events with any real accuracy. Yet immediately afterward, countless books and analyses emerged, making it all seem, well, inevitable.
It really does change your perspective when you realize that the most impactful events are precisely the ones we never saw coming. And Taleb introduces a crucial distinction here to help understand this. Mediocristan versus extremistan. Can you break that down for us?
Certainly, and this distinction is absolutely vital for understanding where black swans are likely to emerge. So, mediocristan describes domains where outcomes tend to cluster around an average, extreme deviations are rare, and they have pretty limited impact.
Okay, like what?
Think of human height or weight. The tallest person isn't, 10,000 times taller than the average person. And if you take a sample of 1,000 people, you'll get a pretty good idea of the overall population's average height. Black swans don't really exist here.
Right, things are sort of bounded.
Exactly, but then there's extremistan. This governs phenomena like wealth, book sales, financial market movements. Here, a single observation can have a disproportionate, even dominant impact.
Okay, so outliers rule.
Completely. One author can sell millions more copies than another. One company can become exponentially more valuable than its rivals. One individual's wealth can dwarf that of entire nations.
Wow.
In extremistan, averages are deeply misleading, and black swans are not just possible, they're pretty much inevitable. They're the drivers of history and progress, yet we constantly try to apply mediocristan thinking to extremistan problems.
That's profound realization. We live in a world that's increasingly dominated by these extremistan dynamics, yet our brains are still trying to apply mediocristan rules. Feels like we're using the wrong toolkit.
That's a great way to put it.
And this leads directly to Taleb's aggressive critique of, well, the problem of prediction and what he calls the ludic fallacy.
Indeed. Taleb argues that traditional forecasting, especially for complex systems, isn't just unreliable, it's actively dangerous.
Dangerous, why?
Because the ludic fallacy is our tendency to confuse the uncertainty of games like dice rolls or card games where probabilities are known, they're fixed with the uncertainty of real life. In real life, probabilities are often unknown, they're shifting, and they're profoundly impacted by unforeseen factors. We build economic models, for instance, assuming predictable distributions, like a casino using known odds.
Right, nice and neat.
But the real world isn't a casino game. It doesn't have a fixed set of rules and probabilities. It's this dynamic, open-ended system where entirely new possibilities, new rules even, can emerge at any moment.
So relying on models that just don't account for these extreme unforeseen events is essentially playing the wrong game entirely.
Yeah.
It's like bringing a poker strategy to a game of cosmic roulette.
Precisely. And that's why experts so often fail, particularly in domains like finance or geopolitics. They often become victims of their own models.
Right.
Because the models, by definition, cannot account for what lies outside their historical data, outside their assumptions. The fundamental insight here is that the very act of prediction in complex systems actually generates fragility.
How so?
Because it encourages us to optimize for the expected outcomes, the stuff inside the model, and ignore the truly consequential yet unforeseen risks, the black swans lurking outside. Taleb really pushes us to understand that not knowing is often far more robust than falsely believing we know. It's about intellectual humility.
That's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, I imagine.
Oh, definitely, especially for experts.
Okay, so if the first part of our deep dive really highlighted the dangers of uncertainty and our own cognitive biases, then the next stage of Taleb's Incerto offers, well, a powerful, actionable antidote, right?
Exactly.
This isn't just about surviving in an uncertain world. It's about actively thriving in it. We're talking about antifragility and skin in the game, these principles for building resilience and even embracing volatility.
Yes, this is where Taleb moves beyond simply identifying the problems to actually proposing solutions. And the concept of anti-fragility is, well, perhaps his most significant contribution. It goes far beyond simply being resilient or robust.
Right. That distinction is key. Can you explain that? How is it different from just being tough?
Absolutely. Most things in life, or systems, or even us as individuals, fall into one of three categories when exposed to stress or volatility. Something is fragile if it breaks or weakens when subjected to stress.
Okay, like a delicate wine glass.
Perfect example, a slight shock and it shatters. Then there's robustness or resilience. This means something can resist shocks and maintain its integrity. Like a solid oak table, it can withstand a bump without breaking.
Right, it endures.
But anti-fragility is something else entirely. An anti-fragile entity doesn't just resist shocks. It actually gets stronger. It improves. It benefits from volatility, disorder, and stressors. It thrives in chaos.
Wow, okay. Thrives on chaos.
Think of the mythological Hydra, right? It grew 2 heads for every one that was cut off. Or biological systems, which often adapt and evolve through exposure to challenges. Stressors make them stronger.
So it's not just about bouncing back to where you were, it's about bouncing forward with greater strength or capability. That's a truly paradigm-shifting idea.
It really is.
What are some of the practical implications, then, of seeking out antifragility? How do you actually do that?
Well, the primary implication is to fundamentally shift our mindset. Move away from trying to eliminate all volatility and risk, which is often impossible anyway, and frequently counterproductive towards actively seeking out ways to benefit from it.
Okay.
For a business, this might mean designing processes that learn from errors rather than being crippled by them. For an individual, maybe it means embracing optionality in career choices or learning new skills from unexpected setbacks.
Like exercise.
Exactly. Our bodies are anti-fragile to certain stressors. Exercise, which is a stress, makes muscles stronger. Our immune system strengthens through exposure to pathogens. The real insight is to avoid trying to control everything, because you can't. Instead, focus on creating systems and strategies that are designed to extract benefit from disorder. It's not a passive stance, it's an active cultivation of dynamic strength.
And a key tool in cultivating this anti-fragility is the idea of optionality, having limited downside but potentially uncapped upside. This sounds incredibly appealing, almost too good to be true. What does it mean in practice?
Optionality is all about creating situations with an asymmetrical payoff. You want scenarios where if things go wrong, you lose very little, maybe a small defined amount. Your downside is capped.
Okay, limited loss.
But if things go unexpectedly well, if a Black Swan event happens to go your way, your gains are potentially unlimited, or at least very, very large. It's a convex payoff structure where the benefits grow disproportionately to the inputs or the risks taken.
Can you give an example?
Sure, a classic one is buying an actual financial option contract. You pay a small premium, that's your maximum loss. But if the underlying asset skyrockets, your profit can be huge. In life, this could mean taking many small, inexpensive risks, exploring different ideas without committing too heavily to any single one until you see traction. You're essentially making lots of small bets with potentially huge returns. Think like a venture capitalist or an entrepreneur launching minimal viable products.
So it's about strategically placing yourself in positions where you can catch those lucky breaks, those positive black swans, without being wiped out by the unlucky ones, the negative ones. It's almost the inverse of chasing those predictable, moderate returns that can just be decimated by a single unexpected event.
Exactly right. Avoiding what Taleb calls sucker bets, those situations with limited upside but potentially catastrophic uncapped downside, is absolutely paramount. The deep insight here is that you don't need to predict the future to benefit from it. You just need to be positioned to gain from positive black swans and protected from the negative ones. Cultivating optionality is a core strategy for navigating extreme stance successfully.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And as a critical complement to anti-fragility and optionality, Taleb introduces this indispensable concept of skin in the game.
Yeah.
This isn't just a catchy phrase, is it? He argues it's a fundamental principle for justice, for efficiency, for avoiding systemic collapses.
Absolutely. Skin in the game simply means that anyone making decisions that affect others should also bear some of the downside risks of those decisions. They shouldn't just get to enjoy the potential upside.
Right, they need to have something to lose.
It's the ultimate accountability mechanism. Without it, you create what economists call a moral hazard. Decision makers can benefit from successes while externalizing the costs of their failures onto other people.
Like politicians declaring wars.
Without their own children serving, exactly. Or bankers taking reckless risks knowing that, well, maybe taxpayers will bail them out if things go south. Taleb argues forcefully that this detachment of risk from consequence is a primary driver of fragility in our modern systems.
So it's about making sure that the people who benefit from a system are also the ones who suffer, or at least feel the pain when it goes wrong. It ensures alignment between decision makers and those affected by the decisions.
Precisely. And it fosters efficiency because people who actually have skin in the game are naturally going to be more cautious, more intelligent in their risk-taking. They think twice.
Makes sense.
It promotes fairness and ethical behavior by linking reward directly to responsibility. And it prevents what Taleb colorfully calls intellectuals yet idiots, or IYIs, from making these grand theoretical pronouncements or policies without understanding the messy real-world consequences.
The IYIs, yeah. He doesn't hold back on them.
No, he doesn't. And the Lindy effect also plays into this. This is the idea that for non-perishable things like ideas or technologies, the longer something has survived, the longer its future life expectancy.
Why is that related?
Because things that have survived for a long time tend to have more skin in the game embedded in their practices, implicitly or explicitly. Old traditions, for instance, have often survived because they work, maybe in ways we don't fully understand, not because some expert designed them perfectly from the top down.
They've been tested by reality.
Exactly. They embody iterated wisdom, often from generations of trial and error with consequences. The deep insight here is that true knowledge and effective action often emerge from practice, from bearing consequences, not just from abstract theories spun in an ivory tower.
Okay, so now that we've explored these core mechanics of Taleb's philosophy, understanding randomness, building antifragility, having skin in the game, let's shift our focus a bit. Let's look at the practical applications and his broader critique of modern society. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? How do we actually live by these Incerto principles?
Indeed. And Taleb offers not just abstract concepts, but some actionable frameworks. One of the most powerful, and I think often overlooked, is the concept of via negativa. It's essentially the art of subtraction.
Subtraction.
Yes. Improving things by removing what harms or complicates them, rather than constantly trying to add more layers, more solutions.
That's incredibly counterintuitive for many people, isn't it? We're often taught to do more, to add solutions, find the next big thing. So what does via negativa mean in practice?
Well, it's the idea that in complex systems, it's often much easier to identify and remove things that cause damage than it is to pinpoint the exact cause of positive outcomes.
Okay. Like what?
For example, if you want to improve your health, often the most effective path isn't adding more exotic supplements or complicated treatments. It's removing the harmful things. Cutting out processed foods, reducing chronic stress, making sure you get enough sleep.
Simple but effective.
Right. In decision-making, it might mean identifying and eliminating the clearly bad options rather than spending ages trying to optimize for the absolute best one, which might be unknowable anyway. In investing, it could mean focusing more on avoiding the catastrophic risks rather than constantly chasing the highest possible returns.
Avoid the blow-ups.
Exactly. The insight here is that negative knowledge, knowing what not to do, what to avoid, is often more robust and more valuable than positive knowledge in an uncertain world. It's a powerful tool for navigating complexity with a degree of humility.
That makes perfect sense. Often the biggest gains really do come from avoiding the biggest mistakes.
Yeah.
It's less glamorous, maybe.
Much less glamorous.
Next, Taleb delves into how power dynamics work in some surprising ways, particularly with scalability and the tyranny of the collective minority. This is a fascinating concept.
It truly is. Taleb highlights that highly scalable phenomena think information spreading on social media behave very differently from non-scalable ones. But the tyranny of the collective minority part is about how a small but very intolerant minority can effectively impose its preferences on a much larger, more tolerant majority, especially in networked systems.
How does that work?
Well, take an example. If a small percentage of people in a community absolutely insist on, say, kosher or halal food options for religious reasons, they are intolerant of non-kosher halal food. The majority might be perfectly tolerant. They don't mind eating kosher halal, even if it's not their preference.
Okay.
Often, due to supply chain economics and the desire for simplicity or optionality for suppliers, it becomes easier and cheaper to just offer only kosher or halal options, or to ensure that all the options meet those stricter standards, rather than trying to manage multiple separate lines for every micro-preference.
So the path of least resistance for the provider caters to the intolerant minority.
Precisely. The tolerant majority, by virtue of being tolerant, doesn't strongly object. They accommodate. And so the minority's preference becomes the de facto standard for everyone.
So a small, unyielding group can inadvertently reshape the choices available to everyone else, simply because the majority is too flexible or maybe just indifferent to resist strongly. It's a hidden power dynamic we often don't perceive.
Exactly. And it's crucial to understand Taleb isn't necessarily saying this is always bad, nor is it usually a conscious conspiracy. It's more like an emergent property of interconnected systems and the fundamental asymmetry of tolerance.
All right.
This insight has profound implications for understanding cultural shifts, market dynamics, dietary trends, language evolution, how seemingly niche preferences can suddenly become widespread. It's a really powerful lens through which to view societal change.
Wow. Okay. And when it comes to actually managing risk and making decisions in this complex, uncertain world, Taleb offers a very practical strategy he calls the barbell strategy. This isn't about finding some comfortable middle ground, is it? It's actually about going to the extremes.
That's exactly right. The barbell strategy advocates for avoiding that mushy medium risk trap. Yeah. Instead, the idea is you allocate the vast majority of your resources, let's say 80 to 90%, to extremely safe, low risk, maybe even low return ventures, things that ensure your survival, your stability, your floor.
Okay, maximum safety for the bulk of it.
Maximum safety. Then, with the remaining small, highly protected portion, the other 10 or 20%, you take highly speculative, high-risk, high-potential reward bets.
The optionality part.
Exactly. These are your opportunities for those massive, positive Black Swan gains. But crucially, if those bets fail, if they go to zero, your exposure is strictly limited to that small, arguably expendable portion. You survive.
So you're essentially bulletproofing your core while giving yourself that uncapped optionality on the fringes. It's like having, say, most of your retirement savings in super safe government bonds, but also investing a small defined amount in a potentially explosive moonshot startup.
That's a perfect illustration. The deep insight here is that the middle ground, which often seems prudent and sensible, is actually where fragility often hides.
How so?
Because those moderate risks can still be completely wiped out by a negative black swan, and you haven't positioned yourself to truly benefit from the massive upside of a positive black swan either. You're stuck.
Right. Vulnerable without the potential for huge gain.
By embracing the barbell, you gain both extreme safety and extreme optionality. You become, in effect, anti-fragile to a wide range of potential outcomes. And this strategy applies not just to finance, but potentially to life choices too. Maybe maintaining a structured, predictable routine for most of your week, but dedicating a small, focused portion to wild exploration, learning new skills, or creative pursuits with unknown payoffs.
That's a very applicable framework. This entire structure, these ideas, they underpin Taleb's broader critique of modernity, experts, education, and bureaucracy. And he really doesn't pull any punches here, does he?
He certainly does not. Taleb has a famously aggressive stance against experts who lack skin in the game. He argues that many so-called experts, particularly those maybe in academia or policy-making roles, are often rewarded for creating complexity, for making predictions that frequently fail, and for theorizing without ever having to face the real-world consequences of their advice or their errors.
The IYIs again.
The intellectuals, yet idiots, yes. People who might be highly educated in formal settings, maybe very credentialed, but lack practical wisdom, what the Greeks called phronesis, and a true, visceral understanding of uncertainty and risk in the real world.
So it's critique of formal knowledge when it becomes divorced from practical reality and, crucially, from accountability. He's not against intelligence itself, is he? But against intellectualism without consequence.
Precisely. He values the artisan, the engineer, the trader who learns from their mistakes because they have to. He's also deeply skeptical of much of formal education that emphasizes abstract models over hands-on learning, apprenticeship, trial and error. And he sees large, centralized planning and big bureaucracies as inherently fragile. They tend to stifle the localized, adaptive learning that actually leads to anti-fragility. These systems are often designed for efficiency and predictable environments, which sounds good, but they crumble when faced with true randomness, with black swans.
Because they're optimized for the wrong thing.
Yeah, they're optimized for a world that doesn't really exist outside their models. The overarching message throughout the Incerto is really a call for intellectual humility in the face of an uncertain world, valuing practical experience and consequence-bearing above mere theoretical elegance or credentials. It's a challenging, sometimes uncomfortable, but I think essential reevaluation of how we generate knowledge and manage society.
It really forces you to question a lot of assumptions.
It absolutely does. We've just navigated this really complex tapestry of insights from Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Incerto. We've explored how to think about randomness, how to embrace antifragility, why we should demand skin in the game. What connects all these diverse ideas, I think, is this persistent call for clarity, for critical thinking, and for a deep understanding of the underlying dynamics, whether you're making personal decisions or building a business, or frankly, just trying to make sense of the world around you.
Yeah.
Taleb's philosophy, it's a powerful guide, not just for surviving, but potentially for truly thriving in a world that is fundamentally defined by the unexpected.
So what does this all mean for you, listening now, armed with, let's call it the Taleb method? Given these inherent uncertainties that shape our lives, the psychological biases that, well, influence all of us, and these hidden forces of anti-fragility and skin in the game, how might you reevaluate your own approach to risk? Where could you maybe apply via negativa to simplify things, to remove the harmful? Or where could you use the barbell strategy to optimize your exposure, get both safety and that wild upside?
Good questions.
How can you apply these diverse nuggets of wisdom, not just to react when things happen, but maybe to anticipate, to shape your own path? Recognizing, as Taleb stresses, that the most profound opportunities and also the biggest dangers often emerge from those realms we least expect, from the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
We hope this deep dive leaves you with plenty to chew on, and perhaps a slightly more anti-fragile outlook on life itself.